France is often imagined through perfume, cafes, and effortless elegance. Yet beneath the romance lies a quieter philosophy about the human body, one shaped less by conquest and more by conversation. Where many societies wage war against scent, the French learned to negotiate with it, guided by history, medicine, and an unspoken social tolerance refined over centuries. This is not a story of neglect or indifference, but of restraint, observation, and confidence in the body's natural rhythms. Long before modern products promised control, France built habits around water, fabric, movement, and air, trusting routine more than eradication. From medieval anxieties about illness and bathing, to Enlightenment ideas about moderation, to modern dermatology that values skin balance over suppression, the French relationship with smell evolved slowly and deliberately. Perfume became an art, not a mask. Cleanliness became a practice, not a purchase. The body was understood as something to be listened to, not constantly corrected. In cafes, on streets, and in close social spaces, scent was managed quietly, never erased completely, never allowed to dominate. To understand why deodorant matters less here, we must step back through time itself. We must listen to doctors who hesitated, advertisers who failed to frighten, and a society that chose tolerance over panic. This story is not about what the French refused to use, but about what they learned to trust: their bodies, their culture, and the delicate balance between presence and restraint. Before deodorant existed, cleanliness in France was defined not by what was applied to the body, but by how the body was cared for through routine and rhythm. In pre-industrial France, from the Middle Ages through the 18th century, hygiene centered on water, fabric, and air. People washed hands, faces, and feet daily, bathed regularly when conditions allowed, and relied heavily on clean linen to absorb sweat. Shirts were changed frequently, outer garments were brushed and aired, and the body was understood as something that needed circulation rather than chemical control. Public baths, rivers, and household wash practices formed the backbone of cleanliness long before modern products appeared. Sweat itself was not treated as an enemy, but as a natural function of the body. In fact, for centuries, blocking sweat was considered dangerous. Medical beliefs rooted in Galenic humoral theory, still influential in France until the 1700s, held that perspiration helped release internal heat and impurities. To stop it was to trap illness inside. Cleanliness meant managing odor through washing and ventilation, not suppressing bodily processes. Herbs, light perfumes, and sachets were used to complement the body, not override it, while homes were designed with windows, courtyards, and airflow to support this philosophy of balance. This foundation matters because France built its hygiene culture around habits, not products. Clean clothes, regular washing, and tolerance for mild natural scent became social norms long before industrial capitalism reshaped personal care elsewhere. When mass-produced hygiene commodities later emerged in the 19th and 20th centuries, they entered a society already confident in its routines. In contrast, the United States would eventually construct cleanliness around purchasable solutions and aggressive scent elimination. France, anchored in older practices, never fully abandoned the idea that cleanliness is something you do, not something you buy. The modern fear of body odor did not emerge from medicine, but from marketing, and it began most aggressively in the United States at the turn of the 20th century. In the late 1890s, the first commercial deodorants appeared, including early products like Mum, introduced in 1888. These products initially struggled, not because people smelled worse than before, but because few believed odor was a serious problem. That changed in the 1910s and 1920s, when American advertisers learned to manufacture anxiety. Body odor was reframed as a hidden social danger, something that could silently ruin reputations, careers, and marriages. Advertising language grew moral and personal. Phrases like offensive odor, social failure, and unpleasant to others flooded newspapers and women's magazines. Smell was no longer natural. It became a sign of laziness, poor character, and lack of self-control. Women were targeted first, warned that unnoticed odor could cost them love or respect, and by the 1930s, men were pulled into the same fear-driven narrative as workplaces grew more formal and competitive. Deodorant was positioned not as optional care, but as a social obligation. To smell human was to risk humiliation. France watched this transformation from a distance and largely resisted it. French culture did not adopt the idea that scent was a moral failing. Odor was something to be managed through washing, clothing, and moderation, not eliminated through chemicals. French advertising remained restrained, focusing on refinement rather than fear, and perfume continued to play a complementary role rather than a corrective one. Where America learned to fear its own body, France maintained tolerance for it. This divergence marked a permanent split in hygiene philosophy. Smell became a problem only when someone discovered how to sell fear, and France largely refused to buy it. In France, the body has historically been understood as something to inhabit rather than to dominate, a living system that communicates through sensation, rhythm, and response. French cultural thought, shaped by centuries of philosophy, medicine, and daily ritual, treats the body as fundamentally natural and therefore worthy of tolerance. Sweat, in this worldview, is not an enemy to be erased but a signal to be acknowledged, evidence that the body is regulating temperature, releasing stress, or responding to movement. Hygiene is approached as balance rather than eradication, emphasizing regular washing, clean clothing, fresh air, and restraint instead of chemical suppression. The goal is not to silence the body entirely, but to keep it socially harmonious without denying its biology. Moderation replaces obsession, and acceptance replaces control. In the United States, the dominant philosophy that emerged during the late 19th and 20th centuries reframed the body as a problem to be solved. Influenced by industrial efficiency, productivity culture, and later medical marketing, the American body became a project under constant renovation. Sweat was no longer a neutral function. It was recast as a malfunction, a breakdown in personal discipline, a sign that something had gone wrong. The ideal body was expected to operate invisibly, odorless, hairless, smooth, and silent, with every natural output masked or blocked. Antiperspirants did not simply reduce moisture, they promised control. Suppression became synonymous with success, and bodily presence itself was treated as a liability in professional and social life. This philosophical divide reaches far beyond deodorant and hygiene. It shapes how each culture approaches food, aging, sexuality, and health. France prioritizes pleasure with restraint, while America emphasizes optimization and correction. French attitudes toward aging allow change to arrive gradually, while American culture wages war against time itself. In medicine, French approaches often monitor and adapt, while American systems intervene aggressively and early. Deodorant, then, becomes a symbol rather than a product, a quiet indicator of whether a culture listens to the body or disciplines it. One philosophy accepts the human condition and manages it gently, the other seeks to override it. And in that difference lies the deeper reason why sweat, in one country, remains human, and in the other, becomes a problem. When modern medicine first turned its attention to sweat and skin in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the response was cautious rather than celebratory. In France, dermatology developed as a discipline deeply concerned with the skin as a living organ, not merely a surface to be controlled. French physicians understood sweating as a thermoregulatory function essential to bodily balance, helping the body cool itself, regulate electrolytes, and remove waste. By the early 1900s, medical journals in France warned that routinely blocking sweat glands could irritate skin, disrupt natural processes, and increase inflammation, particularly in sensitive areas like the underarms. As a result, French doctors tended to favor cleanliness through washing, breathable fabrics, and light fragrance over chemical interference, placing skin health above dryness or scent elimination. In the United States, early medical voices raised similar concerns. At the turn of the 20th century, when the first commercial deodorants and antiperspirants appeared between the 1890s and 1910s, some American physicians questioned whether aluminum salts and sweat-blocking compounds should be used daily. Medical debates appeared in journals warning about irritation, clogged pores, and the unknown effects of long-term gland suppression. However, these cautions quickly lost ground as consumer culture accelerated. By the 1920s and 1930s, aggressive advertising reframed antiperspirants as medical progress rather than cosmetic choice, and doctors increasingly stepped aside as products entered mainstream life before long-term studies could settle the debate. Demand moved faster than evidence, and normalization came first. The result was the emergence of two distinct medical cultures with very different comfort levels around intervention. In France, dermatologists remained conservative, often advising patients to use deodorants sparingly, avoid antiperspirants unless necessary, and prioritize skin tolerance over odor elimination. In the United States, medical hesitation was gradually eclipsed by market acceptance, and antiperspirants became routine, expected, and unquestioned. Medicine did not reverse its warnings so much as it softened them, adapting to cultural momentum rather than leading it. In the end, science spoke carefully, but marketing spoke loudly, shaping habits long before medicine finished asking its questions. In France, the regulation of body scent operates through subtle social cues rather than overt rules, shaping behavior without creating panic. Mild natural body odor is generally tolerated, understood as part of being human rather than a personal failure. Social correction, when it happens, is indirect, a shift in distance, a quiet suggestion, or an unspoken signal rather than confrontation. Strong artificial scent, however, is often viewed as intrusive, even disrespectful, especially in close spaces like cafes, offices, or public transport. By the mid-20th century, French social norms favored restraint, teaching people to manage their presence rather than erase it. Cleanliness is expected, but excess, whether of sweat or perfume, disrupts the shared atmosphere and draws unwanted attention. In the United States, social pressure around smell developed in the opposite direction, becoming explicit, internalized, and deeply anxiety-driven. From the early 1900s onward, advertising and social messaging linked body odor to embarrassment, rejection, and professional failure. By the 1950s, the idea that any detectable scent was unacceptable had taken root, reinforced by workplace norms, school environments, and peer judgment. Deodorant became a form of social armor, applied not for comfort, but for protection against humiliation. The fear of being noticed for the wrong reason shaped daily rituals, turning odor prevention into a moral obligation rather than a personal preference. Hygiene became something to defend rather than maintain. This difference reveals a powerful insight into how societies enforce behavior. In France, social tolerance allows individuals to remain at ease within shared spaces, trusting that minor imperfections will not lead to exclusion. In America, fear acts as the primary motivator, pushing people toward constant self-monitoring and product dependence. One culture teaches adjustment through awareness, the other through avoidance of risk. Fear changes behavior faster than shame ever could, but it also hardens habits, turning optional practices into perceived necessities. Over time, these contrasting pressures explain why deodorant feels essential in one society and optional in another, even when cleanliness itself is valued by both. In France, scent is approached the way one approaches language, carefully chosen, softly delivered, and deeply personal. Perfume is not an emergency response to the body, but an intentional expression layered onto it. Since the 18th century, especially with the rise of Grasse as the world's perfume capital, fragrance has been treated as craft and culture rather than camouflage. A French perfume is designed to sit close to the skin, to unfold slowly, and to interact with natural body warmth. It is worn for moments, moods, seasons, and settings. Deodorant, when used, is light and functional, meant only to reduce excess odor, never to dominate or announce itself. The goal is presence without intrusion. In the United States, deodorant plays a very different role. It is not situational, but constant, applied daily, often multiple times, regardless of climate, activity, or proximity to others. By the mid-20th century, American deodorants became heavily scented, merging odor control with fragrance in one product. This erased the distinction between hygiene and identity. Smell was neutralized before it could even form, long before perfume could enter the conversation. In this system, scent is defensive. It exists to prevent detection, to guarantee safety in offices, classrooms, elevators, and public transport. The body must disappear before social interaction begins. These opposing practices created two scent cultures with opposite purposes. In France, Perfume adds meaning to the body, allowing individuality to surface gently through chemistry and restraint. In America, deodorant removes risk from the body, creating a neutral, sanitized baseline meant to offend no one. One culture trusts subtlety and shared space. The other prioritizes certainty and personal insulation. Where the French believe scent should be discovered, Americans believe it should be eliminated. And in that difference lies the heart of the divide. One culture adds scent to become human, while the other removes scent to become acceptable. In France, the body is supported by the rhythm of daily life long before products are asked to intervene. Cities are built for walking, and movement is woven naturally into the day, to the market, the cafe, the train, the school. This constant but gentle motion regulates the body rather than shocking it. Sweat produced through steady walking differs from sweat triggered by stress and confinement. Many regions of France also experience milder, more temperate climates, reducing extreme heat exposure for much of the year. Clothing choices reinforce this balance. Natural fabrics like cotton, linen, and wool remain common, allowing the skin to breathe rather than trapping moisture. Layers are adjusted to seasons, not sealed against them. The body is allowed to function as designed. American daily life often works against the body rather than with it. Car dependency replaces walking, compressing movement into short bursts rather than sustained flow. Hours are spent seated in climate-controlled environments, followed by sudden transitions into heat, pressure, or urgency. Stress becomes a constant background signal, and stress-induced sweating is chemically stronger and more noticeable than physical sweat. Synthetic fabrics dominate wardrobes, especially in professional and athletic settings, trapping heat and odor close to the skin. Long work hours and compressed schedules leave little room for the body to regulate itself naturally. In this environment, deodorant becomes a necessity not because the body fails, but because the lifestyle overwhelms it. The result is a revealing contrast. In France, deodorant plays a supporting role because the environment does much of the work. In America, deodorant compensates for systems that ignore biological limits. One culture reduces the need for intervention by designing life around human comfort. The other relies on products to repair the damage caused by speed, pressure, and artificiality. Deodorant fills the gap where lifestyle fails, stepping in where movement, rest, fabric, and pace have been removed. This is not about personal discipline or national virtue. It is about structure. When life moves at a human pace, the body asks for less control. When it does not, control becomes mandatory. Deodorant, when viewed closely, stops being a product and becomes a philosophy. It is not truly about smell, but about control. Control over the body, over perception, over how much of our natural existence is allowed to surface in public. Every society answers this question differently. France chose acceptance paired with discipline. The body is expected to be cared for, cleaned, aired, and respected, but not erased. Sweat is acknowledged as part of life, something to be managed quietly rather than fought aggressively. The goal is balance, not domination. Civilization, in this view, is not the removal of nature, but its refinement. Order is achieved not by force, but by rhythm. America made a different calculation. It chose prevention through consumption, trusting products to solve discomfort faster than cultural patience could. Sweat became a flaw to eliminate, not a signal to interpret. This decision aligned perfectly with industrial efficiency, advertising power, and a national rhythm built on speed. Deodorant fit seamlessly into a society that values certainty over tolerance and immediacy over moderation. Blocking sweat became symbolic of progress itself, a visible act of mastery over biology. The body was no longer something to listen to, but something to manage, optimize, and correct. Control became reassurance, and reassurance became a market. This contrast is not a judgment of right or wrong, but a record of consequence. France preserved a quieter relationship with the body by asking more of daily habits and less of products. America reduced daily friction by outsourcing bodily regulation to chemistry and branding. Each choice reflects deeper values. How much discomfort a culture tolerates, how much imperfection it allows, how much trust it places in natural processes. In the end, the way a society treats sweat reveals how it treats being human. Whether the body is something to coexist with or something to conquer tells us more about civilization than any statistic ever could. Across history, deodorant has never been just about hygiene. It has been a mirror, quietly reflecting how societies understand the human body, discomfort, and control. France and America began from similar needs: cleanliness, social harmony, self-presentation, yet arrived at opposite conclusions. France built its culture on routine, restraint, and tolerance, trusting water, fabric, and time more than chemicals. America, shaped by industrial speed and marketing power, learned to fear what could be sensed but not fully controlled. Sweat became a symbol. In one culture, a signal to be managed. In the other, a malfunction to be erased. Neither path appeared overnight. Each unfolded through history, medicine, advertising, climate, labor patterns, and unspoken social rules that still shape daily behavior today. What makes this contrast powerful is not deodorant itself, but what it reveals beneath the surface. Hygiene became philosophy. Scent became language. Fear and tolerance sculpted habits that feel natural only because they were inherited. The French approach demands more attentiveness to the body: slower mornings, breathable fabrics, deliberate movement. The American approach offers convenience and certainty, reducing social risk through products designed to work silently and constantly. One culture places discipline in routine, the other places faith in innovation. These are not moral choices, but cultural ones, each with its own costs and comforts, each telling a different story about what it means to live among others without offense. At AfterTime, we explore these quiet intersections where history, culture, and everyday habits meet, the places where small choices reveal large truths. If this story changed how you see something as ordinary as deodorant, then it has done its work. Stay curious. Question what feels normal. And if you want more stories that uncover the hidden logic behind how societies live, think, and behave, like this video, subscribe to AfterTime and share it with someone who enjoys looking deeper. History isn't only found in wars and empires. Sometimes, it's hiding in your morning routine.